This may look like a crowd waiting for a show, bright sunlight on stone, murmurs drifting like dust, a ring of sand ready for action. But it was not a show, not at the beginning. It was a promise to the dead. Rome did not start with thunderous applause and flashing steel. It began with a quiet duty, a munus, an offering, where blood stood in for words the living could no longer say. Picture the first time the rite is recorded, 264 BC, the Forum Boreum. The air smells of cattle and damp stone. 3 pairs of men step forward, slaves trained but uncelebrated. They raise their shields not for glory, but because a son, Decimus Junius Brutus, has buried his father, and the Romans believe the dead hear better when blood speaks for them. The fight is brutal, close, unadorned. No trumpets, no ticket stalls, only the thud of bodies, the hiss of breath, the silence after. In that silence, an old world ends and a new one begins. From the start, the Roman mind twisted purpose into policy. The rite came from older Italian customs, Campanian tomb feasts, Samnite duels held where grief and courage met. Over time, people moved the line. Ritual killing softened into ritual combat. The death itself mattered less than the struggle that led to it. The living learned to watch. The living learned to want, and watching is a hunger that grows. Rome took that hunger and fed it structure. Funerals gave way to festivals. Private grief opened into civic spectacle. The state stepped forward with an open purse and a closed plan. The Senate called for games, ludi, to calm the gods or convince them. Wooden arenas rose like scaffolds of intent. Later, stone made it permanent. What had been an act of devotion became an institution. When a practice hardens into architecture, it is no longer a custom. It is a system. The system asked a simple question: what happens when suffering is given a schedule? Answer: cruelty becomes efficient. The stage changes the meaning of the act. In a house of mourning, blood is a message. In an amphitheater, blood is a currency, so the Romans built places to spend it. The crowd learned the grammar: gate, sand, sword, decision. A thumb lifted, a thumb pressed down, small movements that weighed more than a life. The city could fill its stone bowl with tens of thousands of eyes and empty it of mercy. This was entertainment, yes, but it was also education. Rome taught Rome how to feel. In the beginning, men fought men. It was a performance of courage and technique, a duel embedded with rules. Weapons that balanced each other, net versus trident, short sword versus curved shield. Pairings designed like experiments to test different variables of fear and skill. The audience became the lab technician. They compared, they judged, they formed taste. If a pairing excited the crowd, it returned. If it bored them, it was changed. Cruelty, like any craft, improves with feedback. Then came the beasts. The iron gate groans. The arena breathes in. A lion steps out, its ribs like sharp fingers under the fur, its eyes too bright from hunger kept like a tool. This is not a duel. This is an equation with a planned result. Damnatio ad bestias, the Romans called it, condemnation to the beasts. The condemned are criminals, enemy soldiers, rebels, sometimes slaves who refuse to be quiet. The arena gives them a script where the last line is always the same. A man runs, a beast follows. The crowd watches something they already know, and watching something you already know is a strange pleasure. It has no room for surprise, so it leaves room for judgment. Some bestiari, the men forced or paid to fight animals, learned tricks, learned angles, learned the seconds between lunge and bite. But for the condemned, the point is not a contest. It is the public making of a message. The state erases a man so thoroughly that even his fear becomes a lesson. Hunger is sharpened, then released. The animal is not the instrument. The crowd is. They inhale together when the lion springs. They exhale together when the body stills. The rhythm is remembered. We know this happened not just because poets wrote about it or sculptors carved it. Bones keep secrets badly. In the provinces, archaeologists pull a pelvis from the ground and read it like a file, deep bite marks from a cat too large to be anything but a lion. The wound is clean as a signature. Somewhere, in a smaller amphitheater under colder skies, A man tried not to die and failed, and the ground remembers. But even this was not enough for Rome. It wanted more scale, more wonder, more proof that the empire did not just rule people. It ruled possibility. So they filled basins with water and sailed war into the city. Naumachii, ship battles mounted on lakes built for the purpose. Think of the resources. Dig a lake, feed it with an aqueduct, outfit real ships, arm real men who have no choice. Julius Caesar stages the first one near the Tiber. Tyrians versus Egyptians, a myth of foreign war acted out with local blood. Augustus builds bigger, a basin so wide it has its own horizon. 30 warships crash and scrape in a choreography of death that is both practiced and sincere. Practiced by the engineers, sincere for the men who go under. Claudius drains a mountain lake and stages another battle to celebrate his triumph over nature itself. And when the fighters call out, "Those who are about to die salute you," it does not matter if the phrase is scripted or real. What matters is that it fits the scene. The theater of obedience is complete when the line is remembered more clearly than the men. This is where Rome's genius does its darkest work. It persuades you that domination is beautiful. It frames cruelty so grandly that the mind, trained by columns and arches, does not see the wound first. It sees the scale. Here is a lake that is not a lake, a fleet that is not a fleet, a victory that is not a victory, and still the water stains red and the cheering does not stop. The empire turns nature into scenery and people into props. It makes you believe that logistics are morality, that if a thing is hard to do, it must be worth doing. The harder the naumachia, the purer the power it displays. Even the word engineer changes weight when the machine is a death show. Then the line between myth and law dissolves. Midday at the games. The sun is high and cruel. The crowd is a restless creature. Gladiator bouts will resume later, but for now, a different kind of story is told. The Romans stage deaths that imitate legends. Orpheus, who in song could charm the wild, enters the arena. But in Rome, the beasts are trained to ignore music. The singer's note is an excuse, not a shield. The point is reversal. Myth bends to the empire, not the other way around. Pasiphae, the queen cursed with desire for a bull, is reenacted with a body, perhaps a woman's, perhaps a man's in a disguise meant to humiliate, with a real animal and the crowd's understanding of shame. Fire takes its part, the tunica molesta, a garment soaked in pitch, fastened and lit. A victim plays Mucius Scaevola, the hero who held his hand in the flames to prove his devotion. But here the devotion is not chosen. The screams are part of the score. The Romans call it justice, morality, spectacle. The words are clothes put on a naked thing, and yet in the margins, resistance scratches its name. Seneca writes about prisoners choosing to die by their own hand before the show, rather than be turned into it. The choice is bleak, but it is a choice, and in a system designed to remove choice, a single act of refusal is bright as a flare. It does not stop the machinery. It reminds us there are people in it. By now, the amphitheater has taught everyone their roles. The editor, the giver of games, buys favor with blood well spent. The magistrates approve budgets. The keepers sharpen contrast, pairing shield against net, sword against trident, man against beast, man against water, man against fire, again and again. The crowd arrives early and leaves late and discusses preferences the way a scholar debates philosophy. Death has been broken into categories and measured for taste. Some days call for the clean geometry of a duel. Some days call for the chaos of an animal's hunger. Some days demand the vastness of water and wood. Some days the crowd wants a story they already know, performed in flesh. The more options you offer an appetite, the more certain it is to return. Cruelty at this stage is a craft with tools. Starvation is a tool. Flooding is a tool. The costume is a tool. The rumor is a tool. The poem afterwards, vivid, approving, or horrified, is a tool too, because memory is the longest arena. The empire learns to move people with fear, the way a musician moves them with rhythm. It is not a secret. It is a syllabus. So how did gladiator games become experiments in human cruelty? By starting as a solemn duty and finding an audience, by finding an audience and building a venue, by building a venue and inviting the state, by inviting the state and discovering that logistics are power, by discovering that power looks even larger when set against beasts, against water, against flame, against the stories people whisper to themselves before sleep. Every step forward is a test. Will they watch this? Yes. Will they watch more? Yes. Will they watch this if we dress it as legend, if we drown it, if we starve it, if we crown it with trumpets, if we pretend it is piety? Yes, the answer is always yes until the world changes shape around the question. But the truth is simple under all the steel and roar. People bled in sand that held no memory for them. The city kept the memory. The city learned to love the feeling of choosing together who would live and who would not. A thumb rose like a sunrise and fell like a guillotine. The emperor turned approval into an ovation, and an ovation into an argument for his right to rule. The games were not separate from government. They were government's breath, its bright public argument that Rome was strong enough to make a story out of any life, even the smallest, even the least defended, and yet there were moments when the audience misbehaved. Sometimes a fighter won the crowd, and mercy was demanded. Sometimes a beast turned on its handler. Sometimes a storm flooded the arena beyond plan, and the spectacle ceased to be under control. Those moments taught something too, that the machine could slip. Power loves the stage, but the stage is never perfectly safe. Even in the Colosseum, the most engineered amphitheater in the world, uncertainty walked the upper stairs like a shadow. As the centuries moved, the ethic changed, but not as quickly as we like to imagine. Writers like Tertullian spit their disgust onto the page. Philosophers called the games a school for cruelty. Still the crowds came. Habit is a wall. It does not fall to argument. It falls to time, to economy, to new rulers with new uses for fear, to faiths that refuse to play the old myths. The amphitheaters became quarries. The sand blew away. The bones remained where they could not be found, or were found too late. Rome did not stop being Rome because it stopped the games. It stopped the games because Rome had already become something else. If you listen closely, you can still hear how the old noise echoes, not as a direct line, not as a simple lesson, but as a shape the mind remembers. The thrill of a gathered crowd, the clean edges of a stage, the easy grammar of judgment. The idea that watching together makes us innocent because we are not alone. We pretend the thumb belongs only to emperors. We forget how light it feels to lift our own. In the end, Rome did not just learn how to kill. It learned how to make meaning with killing, how to dress it, flood it, crown it with a wreath of myth, sell it as justice and piety, and call the feeling it produced culture. That is the trick. That is the experiment. It's not about how hard the blow lands. It is about what the blow is supposed to prove. When a society builds a theater to test the limits of cruelty, it is not asking what humans can survive. It is asking what humans will applaud. And somewhere in that quiet after the applause, when the sand looks almost clean again, a question remains, unspoken, but waiting. Rome is gone, the stone is broken, the beasts are bones in museums, the ships are dust, the pitch is washed away. But the stage is an idea, and ideas do not weather like marble. They return when someone says, "Let us gather, let us watch, let us judge, let us feel this together." The amphitheater is a shape we draw in our minds whenever we turn suffering into a schedule. This may look like history, a closed chapter, a city of ruins, but it is not quite closed. The echo is soft, and it is better that way. Soft enough to hear yourself breathing. Soft enough to remember that the difference between ritual and entertainment is a thin line of purpose, easy to cross and hard to see when the crowd is loud. Soft enough to ask without saying it out loud, whether we have left the arena entirely or only changed its walls. If you found this story powerful, remember to like the video and share it so others can uncover this side of history as well. For more episodes like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments what you want to see next. Thank you for watching. And remember, history is never just about the ones who died, but the ones who watched.